So Safer Internet Day is the UK's biggest celebration of internet safety. And every year there's a different theme or a different online issue, and these come from the children. So this year's Safer Internet Day happens on the 10th of February. So we're having this sort of signposting session a wee bit early just to help you get organised. And the theme this year is Smart Tech, Safe Choices, exploring the safe and responsible use of AI, artificial intelligence. And here at Education Scotland, within the technologies team, we're supporters of Safer Internet Day. So part of our support is to have this signposting session for you that is going to showcase the resources for this year's theme, but we're also going to dip into a few other resources that have been tried and tested and we feel are developmentally appropriate, and they're all free. So awareness raising events like this one for Safer Internet Day, they help us really put the importance of internet safety on our calendars, in our newsletters, and just really, remind us how important it is. But we can also continue this learning all year round. So this is something that can be built into our plans and built into our intentional learning. But to do that, we really need to know what resources are out there, what is effective and what themes they'll cover, and then what are the messages for really young learners. So some of our children at early level are just 36 months, they've just come in to the setting. So what does that look like for them? So we're going to kind of unpick a wee bit what effective internet safety learning can look like, through play, through stories, through animations, songs and games, or even just, those wee conversation starters. We know that to be able to play and learn and live in a digital world requires adult support. And we know that, our youngest learners might not know, what to do yet. They might not know how to ask for help. So that might be our very first starting point. And we also know that, we need families on board with these messages as well. So we need to be able to support them too. And Safer Internet Day is a perfect way to do that because there's resources there for families as well. So just before we do that unpicking, you can also register as a supporter. So you can register your class, your setting, your school. You may be in a community group. If you either scan the QR code or click on the link in the slides, that will take you to the register your support part, and then you'll be able to see yourself on the heat map. And when you hover over that, it'll give you a little breakdown of who you are, where you're based and what you're doing to support Safer Internet Day. Oops. But why? Why should you do it? What is the benefits? Does anybody recognise this image? Okay, so it's from a fairly recent publication. So last year, the Scottish Government published the Play Vision Statement and Action Plan, and there's a part in there all about online play, and it talks about all the positives, all the opportunities to practice teamwork, improve social skills, problem solving, things that echo what UNICEF recognises, is really important skills that children require for nursery, for school, for work and for life, and how digital literacy is all, a big part of that. But it also highlights the importance of cyber resilience and internet safety. And that's really important to us because that's our responsibility, that sits under the safeguarding umbrella, isn't it? And we'll know that, when we're engaging with our self-evaluation frameworks, that internet safety, that's a responsibility of all. Okay, so it's not just, your digital leader or, your technologies person in your setting, but it comes down to safeguarding. So just a few little signposting slides here to make you aware. And this is just a quick snapshot, okay? It's not, everywhere that internet safety would be relevant or apparent. But next time you're having, a wee look through, or you're working with your How Good Is Your School, for those of you that are school-based, just keep these challenge questions in mind. QIs and challenge questions in mind. And for those of you in ELC, again, just a wee snapshot only, very, very apparent in safeguarding. but it's also peppered throughout the free. But within the technologies curriculum currently, we have an experience and outcome at each level for cyber resilience and internet safety. Okay, so Safer Internet Day is not so much about cyber resilience, it's much more about internet safety. But in our curriculum, it comes together, okay, it's joined up. So I think it would be worth just going through that first, and then we'll get stuck into the resources. Okay, so in the technologies curriculum, under digital literacy, within the organiser cyber resilience and internet safety, we have these experiences and outcomes. Now, the benchmarks for early level talk about demonstrating an understanding of appropriate behaviour and language in a digital environment, but also developing an understanding of the importance of passwords and passcodes, okay? Then in first level, it begins to talk about rights and responsibilities, understanding potential dangers, understanding the need for strong passwords, and the importance of permission and consent when taking photos and videos. What does that mean to you? What does that look like to you and for your learners? So it's quite helpful to pick apart cyber resilience and internet safety. And that early level set of benchmarks really helps us, because the first part talks about behaviour and language, which is much more internet safety. And the second part is about passwords and passcodes, which is much more cyber resilience. So within cyber resilience, there's an element called cyber security, and that's when you're starting to, understand that there's other things that you can do to keep yourself safe when you're online. And at the very, very start, at early and first level, that's when we're starting to recognise there's passwords and passcodes in the world all around us, okay? So this session today is not really about that. We've got that covered in other sessions, but just to help you to make that distinction between cyber resilience and internet safety, the internet safety part is much more about the behaviours, okay, and asking for help. And you'll discover that when we look at the resources, the main message in nearly all of the resources for these younger children is tell a grown-up. Okay, so if there's anything that upsets you, anything you're unsure about, it's tell a grown-up. So it's about that seeking help. I mentioned already health and wellbeing curriculum. So many areas of crossover. We're always encouraging the children to manage risk or take a benefits risk approach to anything new that they're trying or they have set up. And any play and learning experiences we offer, we're always thinking ahead. We're always risk assessing. Is the area safe? Is the equipment safe? Thinking about the weather. There's all sorts of variables that can completely change what we had originally hoped for. And we can take this approach with internet safety as well. Okay, so we can think about all sorts of different things. What are the children accessing? Is it appropriate for them? And if it's not, what do they do? Now, we won't go into this in too much detail just now, because this would be part of another session. But before you sort of think about, what resources is it I'm looking for, you might want to take this approach where you're looking at, well, first of all, what are the children doing? I'm sure if you typed in, internet safety resources just into Google, what would come back? You would have hundreds and hundreds of different options to search through. There'd be things about online bullying, there'd be things about sexting, sextortion. There'd be tons of stuff coming through, and that can be really overwhelming. So that's why we've had this session tonight, but also to help you sort of think about that development stage. What would be appropriate for a 3-year-old? Think about literacy development, Are they reading? Are they writing? Would they be able, to read, an explicit message or, bad language or something like that on a screen? So we're not saying that it never could happen, because, you never know. There could be older siblings, older peers there that might end up, showing a younger child something. So we're never saying it never happens, but we're sort of taking a much more sort of sensible approach, narrowing it down. What is more likely for that age group? And if you have a wee look at the 3 words on the screen there, consume, create, communicate, that's kind of what we do, with our first sort of engagements online. Think back to your own experiences when, I don't know how old some of you are on here, but I'm that old. It would be secondary school when the World Wide Web became, at our fingertips. I remember all the PCs in the library being connected. What did we do? We watched silly animations, silly, stupid, not particularly productive, brain rot, I think you would call it now. But that's what we did first. And then we sort of, we would move on to things like, trying to think, what did we create? I suppose even that would be before it was online. You would be on things like kid pics and drawing apps, or Word documents and things like that. But the communicate bit's the bit that came much later, because, well, one, we didn't have the access, but we didn't have the skill, to be able to do that. Some communication's just verbal, and that's what we're going to home in a wee bit more on tonight for the younger children. But other communication, as you know, will be written, typed, and literacy development needs to be at a certain stage before that can happen. So just on that, to home in on that a wee bit more, we have another couple of sessions coming up. We will really look a wee bit more at those 3 stages: consume, create, communicate, what that might look like, what sort of examples you might be seeing in your settings, but then the associated risks that comes with them. So if you think the more that you're doing, the more opportunity, the more risk that comes along. So that's a session, or that's information for another session, because we're going into quite a bit of detail in that. So back to tonight's session, Safer Internet Day. Smart tech, safe choices. What are the main messages then for our younger learners? There are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. What is appropriate sort of conversations to be having with them? What are they spending time doing? What does that look like in reality? So here you are. Here's the breakdown of the focus areas from the UK Safer Internet Centre for this year's Safer Internet Day. Okay, so voice assistants for our younger children, voice command, voice control. So think of your Alexa devices and things like that. And then for our first level learners, thinking about chatbots, they're maybe a wee bit more advanced and maybe able, in terms of literacy development, they're able to, type that a wee bit more. So what sorts of things might they be engaging with? Now, to find the resources, once you go on to the UK Safer Internet Centre site, or if you simply just Google Safer Internet Day 2006, I've popped all the links and the QR codes are there anyway, if you want to just give it a quick Google. Then click on Education Resources, and then you just scroll down and you'll see the age level stage split. Then once you've clicked on them, you have the option then to download for free various resources. So you'll see this will depend on what stage you're working with. Some of this is much more sort of school based, much more than early learning and childcare. So there's things like it's all story based, I should have said as well, but there's downloadable worksheets, and they're quite simple. Have a wee look at them. They're introducing concepts to encourage that conversation, and these can be things that are sent home as well. So let's have a wee look. Okay, so you can see there. Let's have the wee story first. So there's a PowerPoint with the wee story, and then there's these for recapping and revisiting. Okay, so some of you working at early level probably wouldn't use these. You might want to use the story and then just simply have the conversations around it. You might have a device that you can control via your voice in your setting, or you might have some pretend ones set up. You might have old broken ones, you might have, little speakers that the children have made from the blocks or Play-Doh that they can then, reenact these messages through their role play. The good thing about these resources as well is they can be adapted, so you don't have to just, follow exactly the story and then the worksheets. You can take wee bits out, you can, take keywords out if you want, even just to sort of drop into conversation as well. So the message that comes with these resources are you can adapt them to best suit your learners. They know that not every young person is the same. They don't reference specific ages except in those file names, just to give you a sort of rough guide, and you can pick from a mixture from across those sort of different categories as well. So that's sort of the themed resources from UK Safer Internet Centre around Safer Internet Day this year. But if you want to have a wee look at some other resources, that aren't maybe so worksheet based, I'm going to take you through now a few different places. Again, all free, all online, and can be used all year round. So ChildNet, again, the people behind, or one of the organisations behind the Safer Internet Day. And we're going to look at some resources from CEOP as well, the National Crime Agency. So both of these organisations have free online story and animation based resources. Again, same sort of what's the word I'm looking for? They're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to help introduce concepts and encourage conversation at nursery and school and at home. All right. ChildNet are a UK-based charity, and CEOP are a branch of the National Crime Agency. If some of you have been around for a long time, you'll maybe remember they had a resource bank called Think You Know. It's the same sort of stuff, but they're just CEOP Education now. But their role or their sort of aim is a wee bit more specific, and that's about protecting children and young people from online child sexual abuse. Okay, and everything is done, very sort of developmentally appropriate, where you're just sort of starting to plant seeds, and I'll give you some examples of this just now. Both organisations have got resources from early level right the way up to senior phase, and they also have a suite of resources for families, for parents and carers at home as well. So first up from ChildNet, we've got the DigiDuck range. This is a favourite of mine. So these are lovely wee stories. You can access them in like flipbooks, online flipbooks. You can also download them in PDF format as well. So if you wanted to have them printed out, this resource here is aimed at sort of 3 to 7-year-olds, early level, primary 1, maybe into primary 2, early and first level. And DigiDuck goes on, all sorts of different adventures where, he discovers all these opportunities that online life, can bring you, but again, the risks that you can face as well. So he's got to make lots of decisions along the way. Now, the sort of risks that are covered are very real. However, it's done in a way that won't scare the children. So, for example, DigiDuck's famous friend is about he's meeting somebody, he's chatting to somebody online, thinks it's somebody famous, and he's trying to guess who it is. But the person at the other end, is not telling them exactly who it is, but they want to meet him. So it's not a case of, the duck going away on an adventure and chapping a random door. He's meeting this person in the school hall, and he's going with all his classmates and his teacher. And then when he gets there, he finds out it's the head teacher. All right, so the main message is there about, trust, reliability, and, it might not be who you think it is at the other side of the screen, but it's done in a way, that's not going to frighten the children. They also have Smarty the Penguin, which is a progressive set of stories going from 3 to 5, 5 to 6, and 6 to 7 approximately. There's 6 stories in this range, and Smarty the Penguin is the main character, and similar to DigiDuck, he gets himself in all sorts of different situations where he's got to make decisions about keeping himself safe. There's a song that goes along with this as well. Before you click, you need to stop and think and tell someone. So again, PowerPoints that you can download. And there's also colouring in sheets as well if your setting, uses them or sends them home for home learning. This is a lovely story, and it comes as an animation as well. So this one's just a couple of years old. Hanny in the Magic Window. The magic window kind of depicts a screen, and when Hanny sees something that upsets her, she struggles to explain, what she's seen or what's happened, because I think she opens the curtains, and goes and looks by herself when she should have had asked a grown up first. Again, a flip book and a PDF download as well. But there's always positive resolution, there's always lessons learned, and it'll recap, what would be the best thing to do. Oops. Okay, so if you're working with those maybe a wee bit older, I've popped these in as well. Or if you're working with, learners that are needing a wee bit more challenge, or maybe children that are, if there's things coming up at home that parents and carers are asking with a wee drop help with, they've got the Moving On Up range. So this toolkit's got videos and it's got lesson plans. It says some of them are suitable for children aged 7 years and above, so just have a wee look when you go through them. But to be honest, it's down to professional judgment. You'll know your learners best. But the things that this covers, or this bank of resources covers, is, it's things like a young person wanting to have a phone, really, really wanting to have a phone. And there's a little video clip, about this child really wanting the phone, why he's wanting the phone. And then there's little discussion points as well. So it'll stop and then questions will appear so that you can have that discussion with either your class, individual, or, if it's families at home. And then there's a suite of top tips that then come along with that. Moving on to our CEOP Education resources. So lots of lovely animations here. So for the younger children, for our early level children, Jessie and Friends is the main resource. Now they're covering things like watching videos, sharing pictures, online gaming, and online chatting. But like I said at the start, the main sort of message throughout all of the scenarios is recognising when you need to tell a grown-up. If something goes wrong, we need to tell a grown-up. As well as the animations, there's PDFs that you can download again as well. Parents and carers sections too, and there's also a section there for educators as well. It's got a lovely wee catchy song. I won't play it for you just now because it's one of the what will really stick in your ears. But the lyrics are just really simple, but really effective. If it makes you feel funny in your tummy, worried, scared or sad, then you must tell a grown-up, like your teacher or your mum or dad. Then for children that are maybe slightly older or, working at an older level, needing a wee bit more challenge, they've got a game for the older children. Say this is more sort of second level, it says 8 to 10s, but again, like I said before, you'll know yourself. The game's called Band Runner, and it's got various characters in it that helps children to make sort of safer and smarter choices. So the things that it covers, playing games online, being kind to others online, sharing videos and photos, what's appropriate, talking to others online, private information, and the key again in this is tell a grown-up, but there's also a little part on it that they can then go to for support themselves. So there's a worried about something section that children can click on to get support that way. So that one's called Band Runner, but instead of it being an animation, you're playing a wee game. They use their guitars to like eliminate obstacles along the way, in order to try and make it to their next gig. But if they miss a jump or if they fall, they then need to help by solving an online safety dilemma to continue to play. So it's a bit more interactive for the children that need more of that challenge. Now, an additional resource that you might find really helpful, I know I do, is common sense media. So this is a really useful one if you want to share it with your families at home. Tons of resources on here, but the part that, I go to quite regularly is the review part. So remember on DVDs and videos and computer games, you had your PEGI rating, it'll tell you if it's a PG, a 12 and all that. Well, it's kind of like that, but it goes into much more detail, and you can search for a TV show, an app, a website, a game, and it's going to give you a sort of breakdown of, what that's all about, and what are the risks alongside it. And it just will save you a wee bit of time, because a lot of the things, if it's your own children particularly, things that they'll be asking for you to download, you have no idea what that's all about, you've not really got the time to be downloading it and going through it yourself. Jump onto Common Sense Media and have a wee look at the reviews, and it covers things like, does it include things like drinking, drugs or smoking? Does it include things like you'll see it there, actually it's got on the screen, like swearing, sex, nudity, the language, does it have violence, and then it's got your sort of privacy flags as well. So what does it do with your data? So this example here, the one I've got on the screen, was Super Mario Run. So this is, I'll read out sort of the comments that came with it that I couldn't fit on the screen. So, Super Mario Run, drinking, drugs and smoking, very little. But while Mario ingests mushrooms, they only make him a little bigger. Did you know you can flag iffy content and adjust limits for drinking, drugs and smoking in your kids' entertainment guide? And you could then add your own wee comments on as well. It then tells you things like, well, the controls are simple, the game gets increasingly challenging as you progress. Players need fine motor skills and some dexterity. Parents need to know that Super Mario Run is an arcade game, fun for all ages. Like the Super Mario Brothers games, it has the iconic plumber running and jumping, and then it just goes on and on and on with a wee bit more detail. The important part, especially if you are a parent and it's linked to your bank account, while the iTunes site says the game is free, that's just to play the first 3 levels. To enjoy the other 21, you must spend $9.99. So really useful bits of information there. So that one is called Common Sense Media. But there's tons of other resources on there as well. There's a section for parents and carers, and there's a section for educators there as well. But I really like it for that sort of rating and review section. It's just because we don't always have the time to find out more. Something else that I thought I would share with you tonight that might be of interest to you, so particularly when we're talking about internet safety and behaviours. I'm sure for some of you, screen time will be something that maybe comes up as a concern from some of your families. And while there is, real reason for concerns, there can also be, quite a misconception, or this blanket term, that all screen time's equal. So I've just done a wee copy and paste here, but I've popped the link in as well, because I find this really useful. So the message here, it's not about banning, but it's one of balance. Okay, so screen time shouldn't displace the kinds of experiences that we know are essential for development, like movement, conversation, curiosity, blah, blah, blah. But let's be realistic. Okay, what can we do? What's the sort of support strategies if children are going to be using screens? Co-viewing, slower paced content, and giving the children, the ability or the control to be able to recognise, when they might have had enough, and how do they know when, they've had enough? And it's all coming back to that, asking a grown-up, tell a grown-up, ask for help sort of thing. Common Sense Media that we were just on there, they have some really helpful resources as well about digital wellbeing, and screen time is one of them. And they've got little characters so that the resources are aesthetically really nice and eye-catching, but they've got wee characters almost like your Shinari characters. Each one has a different name and a different purpose, and it's about the children, recognising, when they've had too much time, and how it's making them feel and what they can do to make that better. But yeah, if screen time is something that comes up, it's just really thinking about the balance, isn't it? And not all screen time is the same. You might be using a device in your class or in your setting just purely for the timer or the measure tool. So it's just about knowing, I suppose, audience and purpose. That's what I'm trying to say there, isn't it? It's knowing what they're doing and why they're using the screen. This is particularly helpful as well. So it said there on our last one, we spoke about co-viewing. So this is maybe more for your much younger learners. The Frobel Trust have this really interesting little research paper, and it talks about the importance of joint media engagement. So this is where you have that co-viewing, so you'll have an adult or an older sibling or an older peer there, providing that responsive, enjoyable conversation, just so that it's not becoming a solitary experience. So pop some links in there if that is something of interest to you, then feel free. It's really important at the moment, and particularly in Scotland, when we have, such a drive and we're really prioritising early language and communication in our younger learners. Okay, so today we really focused on the internet safety side of things because we've got Safer Internet Day coming up. And as I mentioned, later on in the month, we've got a couple of other opportunities where if you want to come back, if you want to join me, we'll have more of a look at cyber resilience and what are the resources or the sort of strategies for supporting our younger learners to understand, where passcodes are in the world around us, and then why we might want to use them. So we've got that one coming up. It's a two-part one, sorry. Monday the 23rd and Tuesday the 24th of February, so later on this month. And that supports us to take part in Cyber Scotland Week, which is another national event coming up. But we've also got some events for the children as well. So in March, we've got 2 read-alongs, and this wee guy, he popped up earlier on, this little Pet, his name is, little sort of monster character on the right. He comes from a resource or a storybook called The Bongles and the Crafty Crows. You may be aware of that. If not, come along, you'll find out all about it. But this helps support early and first level children to understand passcodes and passwords. So there's a story, and Pet's one of the characters in it. The read-alongs are just simply, you come along, you join in with the children. There's a live read-along, there's a bit of animation, bit of interaction, and then some discussion at the end if your wee ones are still hanging on by then. So just really, really briefly, we won't go into it in too much detail, so just recapping again, internet safety, it's about our behaviours, okay, it's about our actions, it's about the decisions that we make, it's like our conduct, and it's about recognising when to ask for help, who a trusted person is, and the other part, the cyber resilience part, that's additional steps that you can take to protect your devices and your accounts. Okay, so that's a wee bit harder, a wee bit more abstract for our younger learners. So that's why we try and make it as as physical or as visual as possible. So what might that look like? We've got our Bongles story and animation. And just for those of you that are completely new to this, the sort of thread here is that there's some little monster characters that live on an island, and they collect treasures that wash up to shore. And they're trying to keep these treasures safe because there are some crafty crows that want to pinch their treasures. So they've got to work out how they can lock their treasures up. So it's giving the children a real visual here. They're thinking about padlocks, and then they're thinking about passcodes, and then they're thinking about passwords. And then of course we can make that, really relatable by linking to what we can see in the world around us. Anything that they can handle, anything that they can touch, or anything that they can see, and then just having a discussion about why we want to keep things safe and secure, and just sort of role modelling that language. Now, for children that are a wee bit older, maybe sort of P2 onwards, there's a lovely resource from Barefoot. It's a game, an online game, and it's this wee guy here is called Turtle, and he's the new head of a cybersecurity team in an underwater village called Kelpie Deep. And a wee bit like the Band Runner game, you've got to go on a journey, and prompts will come up, there'll be questions that you've got to answer that help sort of introduce new concepts. So they'll cover things like phishing, the technologies typically used for phishing, the common features of it, and how to prevent being a victim of phishing. And for those of you that you're thinking, what on earth is phishing? So that's a type of scam, it's a type of cyber scam. It might come through in an email, and you might click on a link, thinking it's a reputable link, or a link to something that you're familiar with, but of course it won't be. And you'll put your details in, and then a cyber criminal will have your details then that they might use to hold you to ransom, or use in other cyber risks as well. So that wee one's called at Barefoot Games, it's called The Fisherman. Let's pop in there. And then for a wee bit older, sort of, no, maybe the same actually, first level into second level, I think. Maybe older, maybe P3, I think, for this one, round about that sort of level. There's the Cyber Sprinters game. So this is a game from the National Cyber Security Centre, and the children have got to race against a battery that's, it's not a stopwatch, but the battery's running out, and they've got to collect things and score points. They can boost their power by collecting padlocks and answering questions about cyber security, but if they bump into a cyber villain, they then face, a wee mini game, so it's like a wee bonus game that has a different sort of lesson about cyber security to win their power back. So it covers things like passwords, devices, suspicious messages in there, and that's quite a nice, exciting one. Again, depends on your learners. That might be a wee bit overstimulating for some. It's quite fast paced. There's noises. Yes, it'll just be a case of trial and error, I think, for some of you. Okay, so cybersecurity, key element of being resilient and being able to understand cyber risks and threats. That's going to help us stay safe and get the most online. But for our youngest of learners, that's about understanding where passcodes and passwords in the world around us are, and why we might want to keep things safe and secure. All right, and then overall, we're encouraging children to become responsible, aren't we, in every aspect of their life. And from early level, that includes internet safety and cyber resilience. Now, if you're particularly interested and want to know a wee bit more about cyber resilience before the sessions come up, I've popped some links there on the slide. And if anybody wants me to go over anything again, or has any questions, I'm going to stop the recording now to do that. But I hope you've found that helpful. I hope that's given you a sort of idea of what resources are out there that you can jump straight to find a particular theme for the age or the level that you're working with, without getting completely overwhelmed by just doing a search